Today, we're going to shoot a video that I've been waiting to shoot for a long time. This video was called Ghost Hunting 101. Let's get started. Okay, so starting right from the top, who exactly is this video for? Well, it's very likely not going to be for the seasoned paranormal investigator or ghost hunter. Those guys have had years in the field and they, at least for the most part, know what they're doing. So this video is for the novice. So let's say that you have something going on in your house, apartment, or a family member or a friend does. And they don't want to bring in strangers, they don't want to bring in paranormal investigators, but they still kind of want to get to the bottom of what's happening. And let's say, for the sake of argument, you've always been interested in ghost hunting and you feel that you might be the person to actually be able to give them the answers they're looking for. The tutorial is for you to give you a base on exactly what to do. Now, the next person that this video is going to be for is going to be for someone who's interested in getting into the field and might want to go to a public ghost hunt, but they don't exactly know how to conduct themselves at the hunt, or what to bring. So this is going to give you a lot of good tips on what to bring to a place like a Rolling Hills or an Iron Island or any of the literally thousands of places like that across the country. Now, this video is also for someone who may look to either start their own paranormal team, which when I did mine, it was literally years of research before I actually started doing that. That's the first thing I recommend. But this video here will actually give you a lot of pointers of the equipment, gear, and how to conduct yourself on an investigation to have any kind of success. Now, also, this video is for somebody who might want to actually join a paranormal team, and you might actually know a little bit about how to conduct a paranormal investigation from just being around those guys. Now you want to join them and become part of that team, but you want to basically get a base grounds of what you're doing. This video is going to give you a lot of tips to get you in there and get the ball rolling, so to speak. Okay, so the first lesson I'm going to give you is ghost hunting etiquette, how to conduct yourself at a paranormal investigation, and how to actually communicate with the spirits if you want to have any kind of success. So I've seen a lot of paranormal shows, and I admit a lot of what I learned was from watching them. But there are things that they've done, and there are things I've seen done through paranormal investigators that I've actually worked with that I don't necessarily agree with. The first thing is you got to treat the spirits and your clients with the absolute utmost respect. You have to remember, for the most part, if there is a haunting, it's going to be a spirit that was actually a human being, and they're going to want to be treated with respect. So you ask, please, if you're looking to communicate, can you please move something? Can you please make a noise? Can you please give us some kind of evidence that you're here? Give us something clear and concise that we know it's you. That's probably the best way to go about doing that. One thing that I've actually learned is you really shouldn't provoke to the level that where you're going to get yourself or your clients in trouble. Now, if you're dealing with possible demonic entity, which you can't rule out, or a very nasty spirit that's actually tormenting a family, you can approach that aggressively but with respect. You can point out to the spirit that it's scaring the people here, they don't want it here, Then you can go into the give us signs of your presence, but never come out and swear at a spirit. Don't directly challenge a spirit to punch you, scratch you, bite you, hit you, or anything of violence, because either A, you are going to get exactly what you're looking for, or B, you're going to get absolutely nothing because you're going to deter that spirit from wanting to communicate with you. And once you leave, you could potentially make it worse for the family or the client that you're actually trying to find evidence of the paranormal for. And that's the last thing you want to do, is go into a situation like that and make things absolutely worse. Another thing I want to add to that whole thing is, do not make fun of the spirit, and you have to take your paranormal investigation seriously. If you go in there treating it like a joke, or if you start insulting the spirit because you think it's funny or the clients think it's funny, you're also going to make things by far worse. Now, always treat your clients with respect. Don't bring food. It's okay to bring water and some light snacks depending on the situation that you're in. A lot of public hunts discourage water, food, and things like that. Now, I have had clients actually buy us food and pizza, and that's okay. Which brings me to another point. Most paranormal investigators do not charge for their service. And do not overpromise that you're going to actually capture evidence of the paranormal. Because if you don't, and a lot of times you won't, because the paranormal field is actually hit or miss, you're going to make yourself look bad for the client, and the client could potentially start talking refund. Now, it's okay if a client wants to pay your travel expenses or something similar, or if they want to give you a tip, that's okay. Now, the travel expenses really should be squared away before you even so much as go out the door for the paranormal investigation. A tip, don't ask for the tip. If it happens, it happens. A lot of time the food and soda and whatever have you that they provide is going to be more than enough. Now, always know who's going to be with you at this paranormal investigation, and make sure that they know how to conduct themselves and act during a paranormal investigation, to include the clients. Now, how do you figure out where the activity is in a building or a house? If you're going to a public hunt, you're going to get a briefing on it, and they're going to show you where all the hot spots are. Now, there's two ways to handle it if you're doing a private investigation. One, get the client to tell you where the hot spots are and what the paranormal activity is. This way you know what to expect, and you know where to set up your static cams. A lot of folks like to actually go ahead and not be told where the hot spots are and what the paranormal activity is. This way, if you happen to catch something, you can correlate that with the claims, and they can be 100% right on. I always liked to fall somewhere in the middle of that whole thing. I do like to know where the hot spots are, so I can set up my static cams there, so I can actually confirm the activity. Now, as far as the claims go, the client is definitely going to tell you the claims, so I recommend it so you know exactly what to expect. Now, let's touch on going to a public hunt. So, a public hunt, the spirits that are there have been through this thousands of times. Odds are pretty good. They know what a K2 meter is. They know what a voice recorder is. They know what the little red light is. We're going to actually get into that in a little bit. So it might be a good idea not to actually insult their intelligence, to go ahead and say, this is a K2 meter. This here pulls off the lights. If we get too close, it'll let us know you're here. Odds are pretty good they know that. You can lightly ask that with respect, but odds are pretty good if it's someplace like, again, Iron Island, Rolling Hills, any of the thousands of places that actually have paranormal investigations for the public. Spirits pretty much know what those are. And if they're going to interact with you, they're going to interact with you in their own way. And most of it will be like out of the blue, out of nowhere. Which brings me up to one of the things, the questions and answers. Now, if you're going to a public hunt like that, odds are pretty good the spirits know that they're at least dead. So you don't want to go there and actually ask the spirits if they know they're dead. You're going to insult their intelligence, because remember, they were human, and they're probably either going to think you're ridiculous, or they're just not going to communicate with you. Now, if you're going to an outside area that's supposed to be haunted, or a client's house or something like that, it's okay to touch on that in the beginning so you can get it on your voice recorders, because sometimes the spirits might not know they passed on, and it could help them with their transition if that happens. So now another thing I want to touch on is safety during a paranormal investigation. It's simple, just use your head. Some places actually have lights out, some have lights on. If they have lights out, it's a good idea to bring some kind of flashlight. Most phones have one, or you can actually, I recommend carrying a couple with you. I'll go over that in the gear section. If you're outside somewhere, like a cemetery or something, which most cemeteries don't like you out there after dark anyway, definitely bring a flashlight and be careful. Know your area that you're investigating. Don't walk around in the dark without flashlights on because you think it's going to be a way to attract spirits. If you have to do your investigation in the dark, make sure you're seated and you're doing a questions and answer session. Also, wouldn't be a bad idea to know where the first aid stuff is. Make sure that you're not under the weather doing the paranormal investigation. And definitely do not drink, smoke weed or anything like that before, during, or after investigation, because that'll screw up your judgment and it'll crush your credibility. Safety first. Do not run around in a place like a maniac, which also brings me up to this point here. We're going to hit on this. This is very important. There's something called Scooby-Dooing that I coined a long time ago when we first started doing paranormal investigations. You and your team go out, or you pay good money to go to a public paranormal investigation, and you actually are looking for paranormal activity. You're looking for ghosts and that sort of thing. Then it happens, and you all run. You run out the door, you're gone. That's just ridiculous. You have to know what you're getting into. You're going to a public hunt, you could run, you could knock somebody over, and you spent good money and probably good gas mileage to get there. So know what you're getting into. And if you're doing that in a cemetery, you're definitely going to trip over a headstone or something, knock over some kind of a small monument. That's definitely a humongous no. And speaking of such, if you are doing a investigation for a client, that should definitely be the last thing on your mind, is to go ahead and run, because that would be a disaster for your team. Your team would pretty much be finished because your reputation is going to be shot. I like to put it this way. I'm going to go to Starbucks, right? I'm going to ask for a coffee. Now, the person behind the counter gives me the coffee. I have asked for the coffee. Am I going to be terrified that I've got my coffee, going into the store knowing I wanted the coffee, and then I'm going to run and probably leave the coffee and do something ridiculous like drop my wallet and all that sort of thing? No. So if you're going to any kind of paranormal investigation, if you're going to ask a spirit to make itself known, if you're going to play the knocking game, it's going to knock back. If you're going to get touched, especially if you've asked it to, even scratched. I've heard people ask a spirit to scratch them, and they got scratched and they all just ran, left. It's a disaster. If you're going to ask for communication and you get your communication, encourage it. Do not run for it. If you feel that you're going to run in any kind of paranormal situation like that, then ghost hunting is definitely not for you. So here is another big one. Ghostbuster. Listen, I grew up to the movies. I love the Ghostbusters movie. But paranormal investigators are oftentimes referred to as Ghostbusters. Now, whether you're a novice, whether you're a seasoned ghost hunter, you can ask a spirit to pass over. You can ask it to carry on. You can ask it to leave and leave the people alone, which I wouldn't recommend during a public hunt, by the way. They hate that. You do not have the capabilities to actually go in there and get rid of a spirit, and never, ever, ever to a client overpromise that that's exactly what you're going to do. because unless you're a medium, unless you're a psychic, or unless you have someone like that who's known to be a medium or psychic, and they have the papers or whatever they have to prove that they have those capabilities, you are not going to go in there. You are not a Ghostbuster. You are a paranormal investigator, and you are there looking for evidence of the paranormal and possibly to help get answers to the client's questions or to get your own evidence at a public hunt. You are definitely not a Ghostbuster. Now, if you get into a situation where it's absolutely crazy and this is basically in a private hunt, someone's house, store, whatever have you, and they still want help and they want you to help get rid of the spirits, what you can do in that scenario is you could find a medium or reputable psychic and bring them with you and see if they can do it, someone who's known to be able to do something like that. Or you could even ask your pastor, your father, any kind of clergyman, if they're interested in coming in and helping out the family that you're helping out, because you're basically the point man. And if it gets that bad, definitely do not start yelling at the ghost to leave. You're there just to gather evidence and see if it's a haunting, see if it's possibly residual, or see if there's another explanation for the paranormal events, which is debunking. Now, don't be afraid to go into a paranormal investigation, especially a client, and debunk the activity. A lot of times, if you're right and what they think is paranormal isn't, you're going to do them a huge service. There are things like fear cages, outlets, EMF pockets. That's going to be a whole nother video that I'm going to talk about in a whole nother time. But we'll get back to that one. But there's so many different ways that you could debunk a haunting, and that could do the client a world of good. So just use your head, and remember, you don't have a proton pack on your back. You're not going to go in there and get rid of a spirit. Okay, so now we're going to get into another fun part I'm pretty sure everyone here has been waiting for: the equipment. Now, what does the budding ghost hunter, paranormal investigator actually need to get started? And what if you have a budget? Well, the one thing you have to remember is you do not have to go out there and gather thousands and thousands of dollars of equipment. There's a couple things that I'll talk about later that even I don't have that's on my wish list, but only a couple, because I pretty much have everything I need. But let's say you're literally level 1 paranormal investigator, you want to be the ghost hunter. What do you actually need to start? Well, again, we talked about it in etiquette. You need your common sense. Throw out any clowning around, anything of that nature. Then, what do you bring with you? Well, first thing I recommend is some kind of notepad. Maybe not as big as this one, but a notepad nonetheless. So what you can do with that, when you're interviewing your clients, you can jot down notes, because not everyone's perfect. You're not going to remember everything. If you're going to get the history of a location that you're going to be investigating, jotting down those notes is going to be very important. It's something that you could come back to much later on. Also, if you're doing your paranormal investigation and something happens, you can jot down the time and exactly what happened, because that might not be as easy to forget, but it's something that could become lost in everything else, especially if you have a really active night. So I definitely recommend a notepad. Now, where there is a notepad, there's a pen or a pencil to jot down your notes. That kind of a no-brainer, goes without saying. So everybody nowadays has a cell phone. If you're that high speed and you're going to be a paranormal investigator, you're obviously going to have your cell phone. Don't use it to lollygag. Don't use it to look at Facebook. Don't use it to Instagram. Don't use it to take 1,000 selfies. But do use it as a tool that you have right on you for your paranormal investigation. Now, by that, I mean most cell phones have a recorder, most cell phones have a camera, and most cell phones have video camera capabilities. So you can definitely use that as a tool. And of course, most cell phones have a flashlight. So your cell phone alone is the tool. Just make sure it's charged and make sure it's working and make sure it has a good battery, because so if you're going to that when you just have your cell phone, when that thing dies, your paranormal investigation is pretty much dead in the water. Now, about cell phones, really, really quick. I'm not a fan of the ghost hunting apps on the cell phone. I don't use them. I think they're stupid and they're wildly inaccurate. Most of them, like Ghost Radars, something like a Ghost Ovilus. You'll never see me use something like that. And when you take your pictures, do not use any of your software in there to edit anything to make it look crazy, because it's going to smash your credibility. That's the cell phone aspect. Now, like I said, cell phone batteries, they definitely run out. So you need some redundancies. Always have some kind of camera on you with a lot of batteries. Bring a lot of batteries. It's something that's inexpensive. I recommend, for the most part, AA's, AAA's, and 9-volt batteries. Now, another thing that we're going to actually expand on a little bit is flashlights. It's a no-brainer. They're inexpensive, and they're also they fall into the thing of the safety aspect. Make sure you have a lot of batteries, and don't be afraid to bring a few different types of flashlights. Again, that goes into safety. So you see, for probably well under $100, not counting the cell phone that you already have, you actually have the basics to start your paranormal investigation. You can get all the bigger toys and the cooler toys as you get into the hobby. You know, let's say you decide it's not for you and you spend thousands of dollars on a lot of high-speed tools and you wind up selling it at a loss. So make sure it's for you. But those are the few items that you should have on day one. Okay, so you've been doing the ghost hunting thing for a little while and it's for you. Now you want to start to investigate better. You want to look a lot better, maybe even be a more productive part of your team or start your own. So basically, what's the advanced gear that you should be investing in? Well, what a lot of people like to have is more cameras. So I actually have a whole lot of video cameras. I have upwards of 5 or 6. Now, I use mostly those for static spots where I'm setting up my static cams to catch activity while we're off doing something else. So a rule of thumb, for every video camera, you should have a tripod to correspond to that video camera. Sometimes you'll be able to put your camera on a shelf or something and that's fine, but you can really, really cover a better area if you have the tripods and you have the video cameras to match. Now, more cameras. So you have one camera like I showed it before, and that thing dies. You have what I call redundancies. So you have more cameras, and you can also invest in a high-speed camera like this one that has a good flash. Now, most cameras also have video cameras, video capability, so it actually helps expand on your video taking capabilities on the paranormal investigation. So, what's next? This here is a temperature gun. You can measure ambient temperature in your area with it, and it uses a laser. If you want to measure temperature in an area that's far away, you use the laser. And if the temperature around you drops, which when a spirit manifests, it tends to draw the energy, and sometimes the room will get cold or it will get hotter. You have one of these, you can document and measure that temperature drop. I've done it many, many times where I've actually measured a building far away from me and it was hotter or colder than ambient temperature. And I've been on investigations where it got super cold and I've used that to document it, combining that with the camera that I'm using. I recommend getting some type of voice recorder. Now, I do understand that the cell phone is going to have a recorder, but this here, which has the microchip, has a lot more storage to it, and it's just, in my opinion, a lot better at getting EVPs. So EVP stands for electronic voice phenomenon. That's where you the recorder itself will pick up a voice or some kind of other sound that you didn't hear at the time. It just records on a whole different wavelength. Now, video cameras work much in the same way. I've actually gotten what I've coined as a VVP, which I call a video voice phenomenon, where I'm out, and you've seen some of my videos that I have in this channel where I'm just shooting scenery and I get a voice that I definitely did not hear at that time. Now, flashlights. We're going to go back to that because always have a headlamp. It keeps your hands free when you're doing other things during the investigation. And this is something I found here. It's another flashlight, but it's a touch strip flashlight. Amazon, eBay. I got these at Harbor Freight a long time ago. So when paranormal investigators use flashlights to actually communicate, what they like to do is unscrew the top part of this here a little bit. Not that it comes off, but it's that it's just barely there. And they get the spirits to touch it, and it'll kind of go on and off. So I'm like somewhere in the middle on this, because it also could be the coil expanding and contracting because the contact isn't quite there. This guy, on the other hand, has a strip. So you can actually have a spirit touch the top of the strip, and you have this on the proper setting. This thing will actually go on and off, almost like a Morse code, exactly like the other flashlight will. So that, I believe, is a key. If you can find that, I've got a couple of them. It's amazing, and I tell you what, it does work. Now, this is another kind of high-speed piece of gear here. It is a laser grid. A laser grid does exactly what it sounds like, and I like to set these things up here near the static cams. So what it does, it produces a green, blue, yellow, whatever color it is, of like, literally a grid of light. And the whole idea is, if a spirit goes and crosses in front of that, it's going to break up the pattern, and you're going to have a shadow person, and you're going to know that something crossed in there that wasn't exactly a human. You got to watch these things, though. These things will mount on a tripod, but they eat up a lot of battery, so you got to kind of keep checking on it periodically to make sure that it's actually still working. I'm going to go back to lighting a little bit. I will use regular bright, like light bulbs, anything like that I can use to light up a room to actually catch paranormal activity. Matter of fact, lately, LED lights work absolutely the best. Lately, I've been doing most of my work in lights on, broad daylight, and I'm getting just as much activity as I would if it's dark. Because if your light isn't good enough for your video camera, what's going to happen to you is your footage is going to be super dark, and everything that you see is not going to be concise. Now, the ghost light. I've got a couple of these, and I actually swear by it. These are good for getting ectoplasm, actually shadow people, and orbs, good orbs. I'm going to touch on orbs in a minute. In fact, let's touch on that right now. Why not? Orbs are the biggest controversy in paranormal investigating. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be dust, but you will get that one orb that has a trajectory, it's super bright, and it seems to work consciously. So definitely take all your orbs with a grain of salt. This thing will definitely light up orbs, and it's easy to tell a difference between an actual spirit or an orb with the phantom light. I went to Rolling Hills, and I have what I call a flyby, and I caught it with this. Again, these are things that typically take 9-volt batteries, but you do have to watch them and monitor them, especially if you're going to leave it by itself somewhere, because it does tend to eat up the batteries. So I have a few of these, and again, that just goes back to carrying lots and lots of batteries. This one here, this is an old school Ovilus. I rarely use it. I do have it. There's one out there called, it looks more like a hockey puck. That seems to be one of the ones that people use nowadays. What it does, it searches for voices and things like that. It's a way for spirits to communicate if they use it. I'm not 100% a fan on how those things work, but I do have it in my toolkit just in case. You never know when a client is going to ask you, do you have an Ovilus? And you say yes. But I think it does create way too much background noise, especially the hockey puck ones. And you might miss a voice, you might miss a knock, something like that. Now, this is my favorite. This is called a K2 meter. K2 meters have certainly evolved since they first came out. The earliest ones, you had to put a quarter in here to hold that down because it's more of an electrician's tool. But the K2 meter picks up on energy that spirits use. Spirits are made up of energy. If they get close to this, it's going to go from that green light all the way to red. It's a great communication device, and it's a great device you can put somewhere and ask a spirit to walk up to it and see if they can light the lights. It's a good way to get them to show that they're here. And sometimes a spirit will actually love playing with these things. Now, you do have to be careful with these things because a cell phone, if someone's playing on their cell phone, it will set it off. Also, it's a great way to find a fear cage. If you get too close to a microwave, a refrigerator, electric stove, outlets, if you go into a basement and you're near the fuse box, this thing will go crazy. So you have to learn to differentiate between where the spirit is and where the high EMF fields are. Now, EMF field that's high will help a spirit manifest. So that also works hand in hand with this whole thing. Before I do an investigation, I like to do what I call a base sweep. So what that is, I go through the entire place, typically a private residence, because it's hard to do it on a public hunt, and see if I can find out where these EMF fields are using this device here. This way, when I'm using this to communicate with a spirit, I can go where the EMF fields were not. And that will help legitimize the evidence you're getting using this. Now, when you're not using it, turn it off. Typically, this takes a 9-volt battery. Now, there are 3 different types of this. That's the K2 meter. This is my EMF meter. It doesn't use lights, but it uses a readout. So I tend to put it like right in the middle. And if a spirit is approaching you, if there's a high EMF field, that number will literally go everywhere. A good base is 0.1, this is 0.5, but I am in the kitchen, I got a microwave, I have a ceiling fan right above me, so that could explain why it's fluctuating a lot wildly. It's a great tool to have, and they're not as expensive as they used to be. Now, I can put it on Gauss, which is where it should be, and you can see this thing is going off the charts, but that doesn't mean I'm in the middle of a ghost hunt. It means I got my camera here and I got this thing right up to it showing you exactly how it works, which is actually pretty cool because you're able to see the numbers. This works exactly like a K2 meter does, but there's no lights and there's no noises. Now, that being said, this is a ghost meter. This pretty much checks all the boxes, and it's like my new go-to. It's got the gauge you see on there. It'll go from green all the way to red. It'll make noises, and as you just heard, those lights will go off if it runs into an energy field. It works identical to the K2 meter and the EMF meter, and it's a lot cooler though because you'll hear the noise, and if you're going around with your video camera or something like that, the noise will trigger that something is up, especially if you're in an area where there's no EMF. So I'm not saying that you have to have all 3 of these, but at least one of them would be a must for your toolkit once you are advanced. And when you're not using your gear, always turn it off. And I kind of use this also as a little landmine. I'll put it somewhere and be in a whole different room, and when you hear it go off, that's significant because that means something was right by it that used the energy. Let's see here. What else? Trigger items. A ball, not necessarily as small as this one. A bigger one, anything like that, you can put on a floor where there's no slants or anything like that and get a spirit to actually move it around for you. This does work. I've also used a car. This car's got a story behind it, which I'll tell one day. That's a whole separate video. But you can get a spirit to actually move the car, move the ball, Other examples of good trigger items, there's a personal item that belong to a spirit that only works like if you're doing a client's place. Another thing that you could use that's actually really cool is like a stuffed animal, a doll. Some REM pods actually are built into stuffed animals, which brings me to two items that are on my wish list. One, REM pod. I was hoping to have a REM pod before I shot this video, but life interferes. It's one of those last pieces of my paranormal puzzle that I want. A REM pod works just like a K2 meter or any of the other EMF detectors, but that's definitely a landmine. You put that in a hallway, in a room, in a basement with a static cam, and if a spirit gets close to it, it's going to go off with lights and sound. It typically has an antenna on top of it and looks a lot like a coffee can. Anyone who's been in the field knows what a REM pod looks like. The other thing that I would like to have, which I don't know if I'm ever going to get or not, is a FLIR gun. It just it measures the temperatures in a room, hot or cold. It's a great tool to have, but it's not cheap. Firefighters use them, so maybe you can get a used one from your local fire department, anything like that. Am I going to get one? That's hard to say. Who knows? Now, while I'm on basic equipment, I'm going to touch on this. There's a lot of kinetic devices out there that show the dancing stick figures. There's one that supposedly you can build and work with an Xbox that does the exact same thing as that laser grid. I'm not a fan of the kinetic one because I just question its validity. There are some people that swear by them, and that's them. That's okay. I'm not going to do the big kinetic one, which has all the little pinpricks of light and dots, because that's the one that tends to work with that kinetic one. I just think it's an unnecessary piece of gear to have, and I definitely would not worry if you don't get one. Now, a lot of paranormal investigators, especially the ones on television, have these outrageous devices. I can't say whether they work or not, but they're not necessary for you to become a good paranormal investigator. So now I'm going to touch on some old school gear, like what they used in the Victorian era. I actually have two examples of old school gear. There's actually a third that I don't recommend. Some people can use a candle. You can get a spirit to approach the candle, make the flame move left, right, rise, or lower. This is a fire hazard. Don't take the candle into some client's house because nothing good comes out of it. Now, there are two really cool things that I have. One, it's a pendulum. Now, it takes a lot more discipline to work with a pendulum because you have to hold perfectly still, or you get a pendulum holder. Now, you can get a pendulum to swing or not swing as you can use it as a communication device for a spirit. Yeah, forgive me. So there are a lot of different ways you can actually do this. You can actually say, a spirit, if you're here, move the pendulum left or right, or just simply move the pendulum. It's moving right now. It's not a spirit. That's me just kind of winging this. Or if you could say a no answer could be do not move the pendulum. But typically the best way to do it is counterclockwise for yes, counterclockwise for no. It's a good idea to establish this before. Now, does the pendulum have to be crystal? I recommend a crystal pendulum because crystals have their own energy, but you can there are wooden pendulums out there, ceramic ones, anything like that that will do the job. I actually had a pendulum when I went to the Van Horn Mansion actually explode. Quick, really cool pendulum story. It was a purple pendulum. It exploded. I went to Barnes & Noble of all places and ordered a pendulum just because simply I could. I didn't specify anything about the pendulum. When I got it back, it was a purple pendulum. Cool, huh? Now, this next one is fun. Again, this next one's a discipline. Dowsing rods. I have two sets of dowsing rods, and they work in much in the same manner, and they're used for like yes or no answers. You can have them either go open for yes, close for no. Establish that before you start using them. Now, the pendulums, the dowsing rods here, excuse me, long video. Dowsing rods here, actually, you can charge them by rubbing them before you start to use them so they can become imbued with your own energy. People have been using dowsing rods for centuries, not only for spirit communication, but to find electricity and find water. I've never used it for the water thing, but I've actually had them work when it came to using them during a paranormal investigation. Some older spirits will respond to pendulums and dowsing rods a lot quicker than they will actually respond to the more modern gear, because the more modern gear could be intimidating. Now, dowsing rods do not have to be this long. They can be a lot shorter, so definitely use what you're comfortable with. And it can be taxing. I would keep the sessions kind of short if you can, because it does become a strain holding these things vertical for too long of a time. You can trade them off to someone else, but make sure that you wipe them off and you have them put their energy on them. Or better yet, if you're running a team, try and get them, at least 1 or 2 people to get their dowsing rods. They're not expensive. They can be picked up anywhere. Now, we're going to touch on a couple things here as far as old school communicating. Seances. Don't go to a public place and hold a seance. Definitely don't go to a client's house and hold a seance unless they insist on it. All that does is open doors, and they're seriously, if you have no medium with you, nothing is liable to happen. That's super hit or miss, and you're just going to waste your time. If you have a medium with you, you can try it. But again, you're not a medium, so don't get you and your crew into a circle or a table and try doing the seance thing, because it comes down to opening doors that you can't close. And speaking of such, one thing that should never ever be in your toolkit's a Ouija board. Do I think they're cool? Yes. Do I want to have a few for display purposes? Absolutely. Am I going to take one and use it on a paranormal investigation? Absolutely not. You are definitely working on things with that you don't understand, and you could make a light haunting far worse, because every Ouija board has a spirit attached to it, and what's going to happen is you're not going to be communicating with the spirit that's in the house. You're going to be communicating with something else, and it's going to come across as the spirit that's there. It's going to come across as a family member, but it 9 times out of 10 is not. And all you're going to do is open a door, once again, that you can't close. No matter how many times the client wants you to bring a Ouija board or use a Ouija board, just refuse. And if they insist on using a Ouija board, I'm pretty sure that's where haunting came from in the first place. So take that advice right there and tell them, hey, that's probably where your haunting came from, using the Ouija board. I do not use it. I'm not comfortable with it. And if they insist, maybe they should find another paranormal investigator. Do not open doors that you cannot close. So definitely no Ouija boards, and definitely don't take one into a public hunt somewhere, because you're probably just going to get thrown out. I went into cemeteries before where I've seen Ouija boards just laying around, and that tells me someone played with it and something terrifying happened to them, and they just bounced. So no Ouija board. The Ouija board and the seance are two of the older methods of investigating that I definitely no longer recommend. So another question I want to touch on really quick is, if you're going to be a paranormal investigator, do I have to be with a team? Well, I tell you right now, it's not necessary. It's always a good idea to bring someone with you going to a client's house, especially if you're not really too familiar with them, safety in numbers. But you definitely do not have to have 8, 9, 10 people, because this goes 2 ways. If you have too many people on your team, what's going to happen is you're going to have contamination of evidence. They're not all professionals, very likely. They're going to be making noise. They're going to be talking in other rooms. It's just going to contaminate all your evidence. If you know the person really, really well, you can just go by yourself and do your paranormal investigation. If it's someone that you don't know, or if it's a stranger of some type, at least bring one other person. Never go to a cemetery at night. It's illegal for the most part. And if you're going to go out somewhere like that, if you're out in the wild, it's a good idea to have somebody with you in case you get hurt, in case you get bit by a snake, you fall, you have someone who can actually go run for help. Or it's safety, it could be a safety in numbers thing. There are people out there who are up to no good. They see you by yourself, you can become a target. So the discretion is definitely yours. Can you go to a public hunt by yourself? Absolutely. I've done it a few times. You do not have to have an entourage to go to a public hunt. There's going to be other people there anyways. And if you don't want them to contaminate your evidence in any way, shape, or form, you can just go where they're not. I recently did something like that at Rolling Hills, and it does work. 2, 3, 4. I would say 4 to 5 people is the max. You don't need a battalion of people. I've ran ones and twos. I've ran the battalion. I've had like 3 or 4. My favorite team was like 3 or 4 people because you can put 2 people here, 2 people there, and you can cover a lot of territory without cross-contamination. Now, one thing I know I did not actually touch on here, a couple things before we wrap this one up. The 2 types of hauntings, residual and intelligent. If you're a fan of the paranormal, you know this already. Residual haunting is a haunting that just plays over and over or over in an area. No intelligence, it will not communicate with you. It's just kind of like a trapped replay, almost like some kind of a weird video replay. That's a residual. That's something that's just not, you're not really going to be able to get around it. Intelligent is when you have active communication with a spirit that acknowledges you and it communicates you through EVPs. The knocking game, where you knock on a door, a table, or something similar, and you get the knocks back. That's a great example of an intelligent haunt. Hearing a voice call your name in an investigation which has happened, or getting touched, scratched, hair pulled, which happens to me not surprisingly. Those are examples of an intelligent haunt. Now, not every place has, not everything's a demon. A lot of folks tend to go that route like automatically. Not everything's a demon. Most intelligent haunts are either some kind of family member or because some kind of trauma that happened on site and can be communicated with and taken to the next level if necessary. A demonic haunt, you'll actually know if you get scratched and there's like 3 scratch marks or something like that, if there's huge temperature variations, if you get demonic sounding EVPs, or if you see something just beyond the realm of possibility, a literal demon, a really ink black shadow person, which is another form of haunt, which I'm going to get to this too. Types of ghosts and spirits. We have shadow people, we have actual ghosts, we have the ones that you can see, we have regular ectoplasm, we have the ones that won't manifest but they're there and they're invisible. Animals can come back as spirits typically. So those are pretty much the types of spirits and types of hauntings that you can encounter out there in the field. Well, that'll wrap things up. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you can be notified when videos drop. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. And we will see you next time.
I'm Spooky and I'm in charge.